Today, people share their thoughts with the world in seconds, typing on glowing screens, their words traveling farther than they ever could. But in 1900 America, one young boy found his voice not through technology, but through ink, paper, and the smoke-filled air of a factory town that seemed to swallow dreams before they could even begin. In the winter of 1900, in the industrial city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a thin layer of black soot covered nearly everything. It clung to rooftops, settled on windowsills, and drifted endlessly through the air like a dark snowfall that never truly stopped. The city was booming. Steel mills roared day and night. Factories burned coal without rest, and the sky often glowed orange long after sunset. In a small, crowded tenement near the edge of the steel district lived a 12-year-old boy named Thomas Hale. Thomas had been born into this world of smoke and noise. His father worked long shifts in a steel mill, his face often streaked with ash, his hands rough and scarred from years of labor. His mother took in laundry from wealthier families, scrubbing clothes until her fingers cracked in the cold winter water. Money was always scarce, and like many children of that time, Thomas was expected to help as soon as he was able. By the age of 12, he had already started working. Each morning before sunrise, Thomas walked through narrow streets lined with brick buildings darkened by soot. The air smelled of coal and iron. He worked in a small factory that produced metal parts for larger machinery. The work was repetitive, feeding raw pieces into machines, pulling finished parts out, stacking them carefully. The factory was loud, relentless, and unforgiving. But inside Thomas, something different was growing. At night, after long hours of work, when the city finally quieted and the machines stopped echoing in his ears, Thomas would sit by a small kerosene lamp in the corner of his home. While others rested, he opened a worn notebook he had found discarded near a trash pile behind the factory. And he wrote. He wrote about the smoke. He wrote about the men whose faces he barely recognized beneath layers of coal dust. He wrote about the endless rhythm of machines that seemed to replace the beating of human hearts. At the turn of the 20th century, America was in the middle of rapid industrial expansion. Cities like Pittsburgh had become symbols of progress, producing steel that built railroads, bridges, and skyscrapers. But behind that progress were millions of workers, men, women, and children, living difficult lives. Thomas saw it all. He saw boys his age with tired eyes and bent backs. He saw men coughing after years of breathing polluted air. He saw women carrying heavy loads of responsibility with quiet strength. And somehow, he turned all of it into words. Books were rare in his home, but occasionally Thomas managed to borrow old newspapers or discarded pages from books. He studied the way sentences were formed, how stories were told. He learned by observing, by listening, by feeling. One evening in 1902, something unexpected happened. A school teacher named Edwin Clark moved into the neighborhood. Unlike many others, he paid attention to the people around him. One night, as Thomas sat outside writing under a dim street lamp, Mr. Clark stopped and watched quietly. "What are you writing?" he asked. Thomas hesitated, embarrassed. "Just things," he replied. Curious, Mr. Clark asked to see the notebook. As he read, his expression changed. These were not just things. These were powerful observations, raw, emotional, and deeply human. "You have a gift, a rare one," Mr. Clark said softly. For the first time in his life, someone saw something in Thomas beyond labor. From that day on, Mr. Clark began helping him. He brought him old books, poetry, essays, and stories. He taught him how to structure his writing, how to refine his voice without losing its honesty. For Thomas, it was like discovering a new world hidden inside the one he already knew. By 1905, his writing had grown stronger. He began submitting small pieces to local newspapers, anonymous at first. Most were rejected, but he didn't stop. Rejection, like factory work, became part of his routine. Then, one day, a short poem he had written about the steel mills was published in a small local paper. It was a simple piece, describing smoke rising into the sky and workers disappearing into it, but it carried a truth that many recognized. People began to notice.
Who was this young writer who spoke so honestly about the life they lived every day? As the years passed, Thomas continued to work, but he also continued to write. America was changing quickly. Labor movements were beginning to rise. Workers were demanding better conditions, fair wages, and safer environments. Stories like Thomas's became important, not just as art, but as a voice for those who were often unheard. By the 1910s, Thomas Hale was no longer just a factory boy. He was becoming a recognized writer in American literature. His poems and essays appeared in larger publications. He wrote about the dignity of workers, the cost of progress, and the hidden lives behind industrial success. Yet he never forgot where he came from. Even after gaining recognition, he continued to walk through the same streets, to observe, to listen. In one of his most famous lines, he wrote, "The smoke may hide our faces, but it cannot hide our stories." By the 1920s, as America moved into a new era of modernity and growth, Thomas Hale had become a respected voice in American literature. His work was studied, discussed, and remembered. But perhaps the most powerful part of his story was not his success. It was where he began. In a world filled with noise, darkness, and hardship, he found a way to create something meaningful. Today, words travel faster than ever. Anyone can share their thoughts instantly. But more than a century ago, in a city covered in smoke, a young boy proved something extraordinary. Even in the darkest places, a voice can rise. And sometimes, the strongest stories are born not in comfort, but in struggle.